The giant beast turned to the girl and asked her if she wanted to change her destiny. Then, it asked her if she wanted to deliver divine punishment against those who had forced her to live in pain and fear all these years. The creature promised to help the girl if she invoked it. The protagonist could not understand what had happened in the imperial palace. Absolutely all the people who were in the tower turned into stone. They all seemed to have been forced to see something so horrible before dying, so their faces froze in a grimace of fear. Suddenly, the girl heard someone's voice. Maybe it could have been someone in the family. The father, the mother, the older brother Luca, the older sister Vivian, they had to be safe and sound. She wouldn't be able to deal with the pain of loss. The noblewoman shouted at the girl to stop feigning weakness and get up from her knees. Because everyone knew who Fleta really was. The noblewoman became outraged loudly, blaming Fleta for the catastrophe that had caused the castle to turn into a horror house. It bothered her that the girl continued to remain silent. The noble wanted Fleta to see the power of the light that was granted to those of the imperial family. The fearsome monster was about to attack the unarmed girl. However, a friend of the girl who wanted to prevent the attack intervened unexpectedly. Cezanne used magic to summon a magical creature. The magical familiars began to fight fiercely among themselves. The noblewoman ordered Cezanne not to intervene because to end this horror, it was necessary to get rid of the main culprit. It was a true tragedy because in the imperial palace, innocent people were cursed. If they had gotten rid of Fleta from the beginning, their home would not have been turned to ruin. Cezanne asked her older sister Vivian to calm down because although the situation was dangerous, they had to try to maintain prudence. Her priority had to be to find survivors. Vivian shouted that apart from those present, absolutely everyone had turned into stone. Father, mother, and even the eldest brother Luca, they had been among the deceased for a long time. None of them had been able to survive. Princess Cezanne was horrified. The girl managed to encounter petrified people, but it seemed as if she refused to fully realize the tragedy that had occurred. The girl could not believe what her own sister was telling her. Vivian was surprised that Cezanne managed to survive because the rest of the people were not saved from the black magic. However, the sinister girl who had invoked the terrible magic was perfectly fine. Vivian did not even doubt that they had all died because of Fleta since she had always been cursed. Cezanne asked if she thinks it's okay to use a weapon against the child, who can barely stand, because they suspect her. Cezanne stated that her sister seemed very more dangerous than Fleta at that moment. Vivian felt insulted and was startled because her own sister, instead of taking the right side, began to defend the cursed girl. Vivian shouted that Cezanne only acted like that because she could summon a dragon. Vivian reveals that their father always indulges her and continued insulting Cezanne, calling her a fool who couldn't even understand the situation that had occurred. It always bothered her that she tried to seem too good and fair. Not even her useless kindness changed the fact that Fleta was the cause of the disaster. The dragon told his mistress that the words spoken were partly true, and immense darkness was approaching them. This unknown force was strong enough that even the dragon would struggle against it. Cezanne couldn't believe it, and as a result hesitated. Vivian ordered the knights to hurry up and get rid of Fleta to avoid more problems. The knights obediently threw themselves into the fight, to protect their kingdom. The dragon asked his mistress if he had to intervene. Cezanne asked the magical creature to try not to hurt anyone. She did not want to spill more blood on a day of tragedy. The princess asked Fleta if she could walk. First of all, they had to leave that place, and then think about the plan of action later. The dragon Elon could buy them some time. Fleta wanted to ask Cezanne something, but she had a hard time getting the words out. Suddenly a voice said that unfortunately, they had already run out of time. The knights were surprised by the appearance of an unknown magic and asked for help as their bodies began to turn to stone. Cezanne tried to flee the scene. The dragon Elon tried to keep his mistress safe. Suddenly a huge blast burst through the ceiling, and when the smoke cleared, the knights and Vivian turned into stone. When Cezanne opened her eyes, the girl saw that Elon's wings had begun to turn into stone. A long time ago Cezanne had read in a book that if the king of darkness and serpent's basilisk awakens, the world would meet its doom and the fools of the world would become stone statues. Cezanne thought it incredible that she could see the magical snake with her own eyes. The basilisk really exists. Elon said that he couldn't hold it for long, so as soon as she had the chance, Cezanne would have to run with all her strength to get to safety. Cezanne refused to leave Elon so easily. She wanted to stay to help her friend. Suddenly Cezanne noticed that a magical mark was fading away on her arm. Fleta said that it was useless to resist because the light that surrounded the palace was completely absorbed by its darkness. Cezanne couldn't believe that the girl could do something like this. It seemed as if the lovely Fleta had become completely different. The girl said that there was not a single person in the palace who had not known that she was hit, insulted her, or cursed for no reason. She was pointed at and called the curse with black eyes. There was no one who would stand up for her. Everyone just watched as they harassed her over the years. Every day was hell, and in moments of intense desperation, Basilisk whispered to Fleta that if she called him to this earth, together they could punish absolutely everyone. Princess Cezanne could not believe that something like this was happening behind her back. However, Fleta wished that at least the princess had the opportunity to escape from the monster, among all those vile humans. Cezanne was the only person who was kind to her. Maybe for Cezanne, this kind of treatment was nothing more than a small favor. Cezanne probably doesn't even remember. But for Fleta, whose life was like hell, it was a true salvation. No one had done that for her. Meanwhile, Elon was injured. Cezanne begged Fleta to stop the basilisk, but the girl refused to get involved. It was too late to change anything, as she had lost control of the summoned creature. Elon begged Cezanne to save herself. In an instant the basilisk squashed the dragon and Cezanne fell to her knees. The princess's magic was blocked, and the dragon was turned to dust. She no longer had anything to oppose the basilisk. Fleta inquired if she is the cursed princess who will destroy the royal family. The girl asked Cezanne why she kept looking at her with that strange look. The girl didn't seem to understand what was happening. She kept smiling, even though the invoked basilisk had taken away absolutely everything from her family, her home. Fleta wanted Cezanne to feel the same hatred and anger for what had happened. However, she only asked for forgiveness. The imperial family hated Fleta. Cezanne did not confront them, so there was no justification for her actions. She regretted having turned her back on the girl out of her own selfishness. Fleta was angry. For the past was just an ordinary memory that could not be changed. Now it was over. The basilisk grabbed the princess's body with its tail. Fleta was still angry. She states that Cezanne didn't care about her till the end. Cezanne doesn't have the right to say such things now. Shamelessness must also have its limits. Then Cezanne confessed that if she had not been such a coward and had mustered the will to approach Fleta, their lives would have turned out completely different. Fleta was touched. It was eminent in her eyes. Fleta lowered her head. The basilisk prepared to end Cezanne. However, it stopped and Fleta jumped towards Cezanne gracefully. Fleta began to cry because it seemed to her that they had lost the last opportunity to have a happy ending. Cezanne continued to beg for forgiveness. Fleta asked the girl if they would meet again in the afterlife. Cezanne promised that she would, if they ever had the opportunity to see each other again. Suddenly, the princess woke up. In front of her was her maid Mel. This was surprising because Vivian had said that absolutely all the people in the imperial palace had died. The maid excitedly asked the lady if she was fine. Not long ago, the royal doctor had said that Cezanne's health had improved a lot after her illness. The princess did not understand what was happening around her. It was even more difficult for her to understand why she was wearing a childish chemise when she looked in the mirror. The girl was surprised to see that her reflection looked different. She seemed much younger and had a more youthful face in the mirror's reflection. The girl could not understand how she had regained her youth if she had met her demise by the basilisk. Meanwhile, the maid commented that her mistress had never looked so beautiful. The princess asked what year it was in the imperial calendar. The maid responded that it was the year 970. Cezanne did not understand anything because according to her calculations, it was 976. The maid assumed that the lady must have had a very strange dream if it had taken her so long to wake up from it. The maid began to hurry the princess because the young woman had to be prepared for today's lunch. Everyone is alive. Even their caresses were so warm, and even in appearance, they did not look like stone statues. Cezanne had traveled in time. This meant that her family was also in perfect health. The king and queen greeted their daughter affectionately. Cezanne threw herself into their arms. Her parents assumed that the princess might have missed the warmth of the family after her illness. Cezanne said that she missed her family a lot. The girl sincerely wished her parents to continue living their long and happy lives. The king and queen were surprised because before, their daughter had never spoken such affectionate words. The embarrassed king promised that they would live a long life. However, the father was worried about his daughter's health. The king promised to find and eliminate the cause of what could have caused Cezanne's anxiety. The princess said that she was perfectly fine. This answer pleased her parents very much. Suddenly, the girl felt that someone was putting a hand on her. It was her older brother Luca. He asked his little sister how she was feeling. Luca also thought that something was wrong with Cezanne because before she had never spoke kindly in conversations. The girl didn't like it when he treated her like a little girl. The prince told the girl that he would continue treating her like a little kid. However, Cezanne couldn't accept it because in reality, her age required more respect. Suddenly, Vivian ran to hug her little sister. She said that Cezanne must not be sick because she was very worried about her. The protagonist thanked her older sister for her concern. She still felt a little uneasy about what had happened to them in their past lives. The princess still remembered the encounter with Basilisk and the intense pain in her body. The girl was sure that everything had really happened. However, today was the year 970, and that meant that she had traveled exactly 6 years back in time. Now was approximately the time when the princess had fallen ill, shortly before turning 17. Before, traveling through time had seemed impossible to most people, but Fleta's wish had come true. Cezanne asked the maid where the girl was now. The maid hesitated because she did not want to answer that question. After some pleading from her mistress, Mel decided to guide Cezanne to Fleta's room on her own. The girl lived in the maid's room that was at the end of the hallway. The princess noticed that Miss Mila was leaving the room. She was the nanny in charge of the house. Miss Mila was a rather peculiar person and had a rather unpleasant reputation. Cezanne asked Mel to stand guard. Before leaving, the princess asked the maid if she was going to ask her why she wanted to look for the girl. The maid was not very sure if she should stop Cezanne or not. So before Mel changed her mind, she should hurry up and find out what she wanted more quickly. Thanking the maid, the princess ran towards the door. Once inside, she immediately smelled something foul. Besides, the room was so dark inside that it was almost impossible to see anything. Cezanne lit a magical fire, trying to look around the room. Right in front of her sat a Fleta tied up in chains and has obviously gone through something terrible. Cezanne pondered if she had passed away. Her skin felt cold to the touch. Fortunately, Fleta's heart was still beating. She couldn't believe that someone could do this to a child. Fleta needed immediate help. Cezanne had not even considered before the fact that the girl was receiving such cruel treatment. But in her past life, the princess could not imagine something like this. It must have been very hard for the girl. Cezanne regretted having ignored her before. The girl hoped that Fleta's would feel warm, and then her world would stop being so cold. The doctor said that the girl was in serious trouble due to malnutrition combined with symptoms of dehydration and hypothermia. Her poor conditions would have led to something bad. If she wasn't discovered when she was, the doctor said that he would prescribe medication to help her. If she treat the girl's wounds consistently, she'll be fine. The princess thanked the doctor for his help and he took his leave. Suddenly, Miss Mila ran into the room. She sat on her knees and began to thank Cezanne for having saved the unfortunate girl from a terrible fate. The princess looked at the cruel maid with contempt. Cezanne asked if she didn't know anything about what was happening. Mila said she had no clue. Cezanne continued interrogating the nanny, wanting to know why Fleta's health was in such poor condition. Miss Mila said that the girl had always eaten well and had never complained of discomfort. The princess knelt down and asked who had chained Fleta. In such a case, especially if the maid didn't even know, It meant that she was neglecting her work obligations. Trembling Miss Mila said that Fleta was out of control, so she had to teach her a little lesson. The princess got angry because hitting and starving a girl had nothing to do with the discipline, and the maid said that due to her picky eating habits, Fleta skipped meals very often. Also, according to Miss Mila, the girl could not be forced to bathe. Interrupting the conversation, the princess told the maid to raise her head. Saison, she slapped the cruel maid with all her might. Miss Mila was officially fired. The maid begged for mercy, but the princess ordered the guards to imprison the woman in a dungeon for 3 days. She forbade them to give her anything to eat or drink. The nanny shouted her innocence, but the furious Saison was not going to listen to a single word. The princess felt very sorry for the girl. Her body had probably become so thin and fragile because she had not had the opportunity to eat normal food. Fleta was feared by everyone as a sinister being, but up close one could see that she was the most ordinary and innocent girl, just a little girl who needed warmth and care. After a while, maids ran into the room, finally finding the princess, who left it without a word. At such a late hour, without warning, the princess said she was here because the child was in danger, and she's come to take appropriate measures. The maids flinched, then the maid said it was late, so if Her Majesty knew what had happened, she would be worried. May whispers that the maids would take care of Fleta, so it's best for Saison to leave. When she woke up, the girl assumed she was in paradise, because she had never before lain down on such a soft bed. Fleta saw a tray with fresh and appetizing food in front of her. Then the girl was finally convinced that she had gone to heaven. Suddenly the princess sitting next to her told Fleta that she had not died. The girl was very surprised to see the princess in front of her. Saison told Fleta that first she had to eat the food. Fleta noticed it seemed incredibly delicious. Saison pondered why she had not yet gotten to the food. The frightened girl was not sure if she had the right to touch her breakfast. Surely, if it had not been for the princess's instructions, she would have continued looking excitedly at the served food. Saison told her that she would throw it all away if she didn't want to eat, but Fleta protested because she hadn't had a chance to eat well in recent years. The girl couldn't believe that the food could be so delicious. The food was very different from the dry bread and the strange-tasting stew that she always had. The princess wondered how long she had had to go hungry. If she devoured the simplest foods with such appetite, from now on it was worth feeding the girl well so that she would gain weight and recover. When she noticed the frown, Fleta froze suddenly with the spoon in her hands because it seemed to her that the princess was getting angry. The frightened girl began to apologize. Saison suggested out loud that perhaps Fleta would like to eat something else, forgetting her fear. The hungry girl felt happy. The princess asked the maid to bring more desserts. Then the girl began to be washed. The maids commented that Fleta seemed to have never bathed, since the water was blackened by dirt. The maid shamelessly commented on the scars on Fleta's body, calling them unpleasant and ugly. Suddenly, Princess and Mel entered the room. The maids began to make excuses, claiming they did not know what means to use to wash such a dirty person. Such rudeness on the part of the maids seemed absolutely unacceptable. Mel stated that the maids had no right to insult the unfortunate girl in the room. Saison, unwilling to listen to anyone's excuses, ordered the maids to immediately leave the room. The princess then said that she alone would bathe the girl. She ordered Mel to take care of the rest of the maids. Fleta began to protest, saying that she could wash herself. Despite the girl's protest, Saison decided to stay and help anyways. The princess began to gently rub the wounds on the girl's body. There were whip marks, nail scratches, and even bruises on her back, which were black and blue. It's scary to imagine how much it hurt. The girl didn't understand why the princess was so gentle with her, touching her back with her warm hands. Fleta felt so comfortable that she felt like she was going to melt. Suddenly, the girl began to cry. The princess noticed that the tears springing from the girl's cheeks. Saison assumed that the girl was in pain because the soap could get into the open wounds. The girl said that she was fine. However, the princess still did not understand the reason why she continued to shed tears. Then Fleta told her that something had just gotten into her eye. Fleta told her she would stop. Saison told the girl that she could cry for the time necessary until she calmed down. It was fine because she had every right to cry. After she finished bathing her, Fleta put on her new clothes and sniffed her clean clothes, since before she had to wear old and dirty rags. The clothes belonged to a young maid. It was a little big on her though. Cezanne wondered why she was smelling it. Cezanne told the girl that she could go now. Fleta was startled, because she thought that the end of the magical time. The girl sincerely thanked the princess for the delicious food and the bath with clean water. It had probably been the best day of her life. Cezanne was very surprised. She told Fleta that she was coming with her, since the room she was staying in no longer existed. The room the girl was going to sleep in turned out to be very pretty. Fleta said that she really liked the room. Cezanne turned around and told her to get some rest. Meanwhile, Fleta dropped onto the bed. It felt soft and fluffy. Suddenly Fleta decided to drop on the bed. Cezanne heard a strange sound above the ceiling of her room. The maid assumed that Fleta really liked her new bed. Cezanne felt great relief. Fleta thought that the princess was a very good person. She gave her good food, took care of bathing her, provided her with clothes, and even gave her a room. In the girl's opinion, Cezanne was very pretty. She had bright golden hair and green eyes like those of a true angel. Eager to smell Princess Fleta's scent, she began to sniff her clothes. The girl hoped they could become friends. Suddenly, the girl remembered Miss Mila, who had called her an insignificant bug and a useless parasite that only feeds without a purpose. Fleta should not have expected to be able to be in this palace as a noble princess. According to the Mila, this girl would never be able to reach the same high level. Her existence was a sin. Her chest tightened and she could barely breathe. The girl remembered these words and thought that her existence is a sin. She began to cry and wonder if she deserved any of this. Meanwhile, Cezanne thought it was necessary to think about everything in detail. Previously, the princess had thought that the basilisk was a rumor to torture Fleta. However, if this girl was capable of being born in some way with the powers of darkness, it meant that she would be able to summon the basilisk again at absolutely any time. The maid told the princess that unfortunately, no records or books had been found about the basilisk. This was strange, since Cezanne was absolutely sure she had previously seen a record of the basilisk somewhere. The king of darkness and snakes. If the basilisk awakened, the world that the princess knew would find its doom. Cezanne guessed that maybe she was worrying too much about the basilisk right now. Fleta is different from the older Fleta. She may not even be able to summon a basilisk this time, so everything is fine for now. In the next scene, the collapse of her empire had come. The princess woke up from a terrible nightmare. Cezanne was worried, because this dream could have been a prophecy. However, it could have been an ordinary dream. However, Fleta could summon the basilisk again. And it was unlikely that another time travel would solve the problem. The maid told the mistress that she was very sweaty. Her nightgown was soaked with sweat. The maid then suggested that perhaps the princess was not feeling well. Cezanne said that she was just having a nightmare. Mel suggested that the unpleasant dreams could be because the mistress was worrying too much about Fleta. The princess responded that she should go to class in order to get all the bad thoughts out of her head. Fleta woke up hungry. A maid called to her and asked if she was awake. She jumped out of bed, and the maid asked permission to enter. Fleta opened the door for her. The maid had a tray with breakfast in her hands. Fleta looked at the biscuits with a sparkle in her eyes. Meanwhile, the training was helping the princess to put her thoughts in order. She now felt much better. The girl continued thinking about Fleta. She hoped that the maid had taken good care of the girl. The maid told the girl that the second princess was on the way. Mel said that it was a good idea to prepare for the princess's visit. In that case, Fleta surely wanted to look good in front of Her Highness. The maids greeted the second princess. The girl obediently repeated after them. Today, the princess looked incredible like a true goddess of war. The girl could not stop admiring her beautiful appearance. Cezanne noticed that Fleta is instantly taking a liking to her. Only after she showed her a little kindness and she began to shine with happiness. However, she wanted to stop the same thing from reoccurring. The girl wondered if it would be polite to tell the princess how pretty she was, but Fleta, remembering the past cruelty of Melia, suddenly turned away. Cezanne asked the girl if she was okay. Fleta was very worried. Well, if she approached the princess, she would surely become a burden for her. The girl didn't want that to happen, so Fleta lied, saying that she was fine. However, the princess couldn't recognize the lie, so she found this answer quite satisfactory. Without being able to resist, the girl told Cezanne that she had a very beautiful smile. The embarrassed princess did not even know how to respond to such sincere compliments towards her. Fleta called Cezanne the most beautiful person who looks like an angel from heaven. This triggers Cezanne's memories of Fleta's words. The princess bitterly admitted that in reality, she was far from being as nice as she might have seemed at first glance. Fleta began to bow and apologize. Cezanne felt sad. She had no intention to scare the girl. The princess said that Fleta should not apologize because she had done nothing wrong, not wanting to scare the girl with her presence. Cezanne said she had to leave. Fleta decided to follow her. No matter where she went, Fleta also went with a shimmer in her eyes. The princess didn't understand why the girl followed her everywhere. It wasn't like the girl was comfortable. Even now, she began to flinch if she looks at her. Fleta looked at the princess with puppy dog eyes. The girl must have been very bored if she kept chasing Cezanne. The princess didn't even know how she should act in a situation like that. It was the first time she had taken care of such a small child. If Cezanne was careless, the series of terrible events would be forced to repeat itself. The princess was no less scared than Fleta, but at the same time, Cezanne wanted the girl to enjoy her childhood and be healthy. The princess wanted to help Fleta live a happy life. Everything was very complicated. One could only speculate about what would make the girl really happy. Maybe the princess was just afraid that this girl could summon the basilisk. Cezanne held stuffed animal and placed it in the girl's hands. Remember to like the video and subscribe. If it does well, I'll release the full version. Thanks for your support.